Good evening and welcome back to another episode of The Longing. Today we are going to be continuing to read The Sleeper Awakes by H.G. Wells. So let's get going. Ostrog looked at him steadfastly. The day of democracy is past, he said. Past forever. That day began with the bowmen of Cressy. I don't know what that name is. It ended when marching infantry, when common men in masses ceased to win the battles of the world, when costly cannon, great ironclads and strategic railways became the means of power. Today is the day of wealth. Wealth now is power, as it never was before. It commands earth and sea and sky. All power is for those who can handle wealth. On your behalf, you must accept facts. And these are facts. The world for the crowd as ruler. Even in your days that creed had been tried and condemned. Today it is only one believer. A multiplex, silly one, the man in the crowd. Graham did not answer immediately. He stood lost in sombre preoccupations. No, said Ostrog. The day of the common man is past. On the open countryside one man is as good as another, or nearly as good. The earlier aristocracy had a precarious tenure of strength and audacity. They were tempered. There were insurrections, duels, riots. The first real aristocracy, the first permanent aristocracy, came in with castles and armour and vanished before the musket and bow. But this is the second aristocracy, the real one. Those days of gunpowder and democracy were only an eddy in the stream. The common man now is a helpless unit. In these days we have this great machine of the city, and an organization complex beyond his understanding. Yet, said Graham, there is something resists, something you are holding down, something that stirs and presses. You will see, said Ostrog, with a forced smile that would brush these difficult questions aside. I have not roused the force to destroy myself. Trust me. I wonder, said Graham. Ostrog stared. Must the world go this way? Said Graham, with his emotions at the speaking point. Must it indeed go in this way? Have all our hopes been in vain? What do you mean, said Ostrog. Hopes? I come from a democratic age, and I find an aristocratic tyranny. Well, but you are the chief tyrant. Graham shook his head. Well, said Ostrog, take the general question. It is the way that change has always travelled. Aristocracy, the prevalence of the best, the suffering and extinction of the unfit, and so to better things. But aristocracy, those people I met, oh, not those, said Ostrog, but for the most part they go to their death, vice and pleasure. They have no children. That sort of stuff will die out. If the world keeps to one road, that is, if there is no turning back. An easy road to excess, convenient euthanasia for the pleasure-seekers singed in the flame, that is the way to improve the race. Pleasant extinction, said Graham. Yet, he thought for an instant, there is that other thing, the crowd, the great mass of poor men. Will that die out? That will not die out. And it suffers. Its suffering is a force that even you, Ostrog, moved impatiently, and when he spoke rather less evenly than before. Don't trouble about these things, he said. Everything will be settled in a few days now. The crowd is a huge, foolish beast. What if it does not die out? Even if it does not die, it can still be tamed and driven. I have no sympathy with servile men. You heard those people shouting and singing 2 nights ago. They were taught that song. If you had taken any man there in cold blood and asked why he shouted, he could not have told you. They think they are shouting for you, that they are loyal and devoted to you. Just then they were ready to slaughter the council. Today they are already murmuring against those who have overthrown the council. No, no, said Graham. They shouted because their lives were dreary, without joy or pride, and because in me, they hoped. And what was their hope? What is their hope? What right have they to hope? They work ill, and they want the reward of those who work well. The hope of mankind. What is it? That some day the overman may come, that some day the inferior, the weak and the bestial may be subdued or eliminated. Subdued if not eliminated. The world is no place for the bad, the stupid, the enervated. Their duty, it's a fine duty too, is to die. The death of the failure. That is the path by which the beast rose to manhood, by which man goes on to higher things. Ostrog took a pace, seemed to think, and turned on Graham. I can imagine how this great world state of ours seems to a Victorian Englishman. You regret all the old forms of representative government. Their spectres still haunt the world. The voting councils and parliaments and all that 18th century tomfoolery. You feel moved against our pleasure cities. I might have thought of that had I not been busy. But you will learn better. The people are mad with envy. They would be in sympathy with you. Even in the streets now, they clamour to destroy the pleasure cities. But the pleasure cities are excretory organs of the state, attractive places that year after year draw together all that is weak and vicious, all that is lascivious and lazy, all the easy roguery of the world, to a graceful destruction. They go there, they have their time, they die childless. All the pretty, silly, lascivious women die childless, and mankind is the better. If the people were sane, they would not envy the rich their way of death. You would emancipate the silly, brainless workers that we have enslaved, and try to make their lives easy and pleasant again, just as they have sunk to what they are fit for. He smiled a smile that irritated Graham oddly. You will learn better. I know those ideas. In my boyhood I read your Shelley, and dreamt of liberty. There is no liberty, save wisdom and self-control. Liberty is within, not without. It is each man's own affair. Suppose, which is impossible, that these swarming, yelping fools in blue get the upper hand of us. What then? They will only fall to other masters. So long as there are sheep, nature will insist on beasts of prey. It would mean but a few 100 years' delay. The coming of the aristocrat is fatal and assured. The end will be the overman, for all the mad protests of humanity. Let them revolt. Let them win and kill me and my like. Others will arise, other masters. The end will be the same. I wonder, said Graham doggedly. For a moment he stood downcast. But I must see these things for myself, he said, suddenly assuming a tone of confident mastery. Only by seeing can I understand. I must learn. That is what I want to tell you, Ostrog. I do not want to be king in a pleasure city. That is not my pleasure. I have spent enough time with aeronautics, and those other things. I must learn how people live now, how the common life has developed. Then I shall understand these things better. I must learn how common people live, the labour people more especially, how they work, marry, bear children, die. You get that from our realistic novelists, suggested Ostrog, suddenly preoccupied. I want reality, said Graham. There are difficulties, said Ostrog, and thought. On the whole. I did not expect. I had thought. And yet, perhaps, you say you want to go through the ways of the city and see the common people? Suddenly he came to some conclusion. You would need to go disguised, he said. The city is intensely excited, and the discovery of your presence among them might create a fearful tumult. Still, this wish of yours to go into this city, this idea of yours. Yes, now I think the thing over, it seems to me not altogether. It can be contrived. If you would really find an interest in that, You are, of course, master. You can go soon if you like. A disguise Asano will be able to manage. He would go with you. After all, it is not a bad idea of yours. You will not want to consult me in any matter? Asked Graham suddenly, struck by an odd suspicion. Oh, dear no. No, I think you may trust affairs to me for a time, at any rate, said Ostrog, smiling. Even if we differ. Graham glanced at him sharply. There is no fighting likely to happen soon, he asked abruptly. Certainly not. And with that, we come to the end of the episode. And I will say thank you very much for joining us today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, or night. No matter what time of day it is, I hope you all have a wonderful one of it. And as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.